Greetings, CATDC. As you're busy bringing this school year like no other to a close, we're wrapping up our ongoing groups. These are cohorts that met 5 or 6 times over the course of the year, with a focus on reflection and connection, as well as skill development. One of our key aims at CATDC is to support educators to get out of their silos, become teachers of teachers, leaders of leaders, learning with and from each other. So I'm delighted today to have Carla Cretaro, lower school head at the John Thomas Dye School, and Laura Ross, associate head of school at Harvard Westlake. They teamed up this year to facilitate our Developing Your Leadership Capacity, which finished up this last month. Thank you so much for coming.
Of course.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
So can you tell us about some of the key topics you explored over the course of your ongoing group this year?
Sure. So Laura and I thought about sort of 2 parts of leadership that are most important. One part being the emotional. How are you as a leader? How do you think about and reflect on what your core values are? How do those values come into play with the school where you work? And then also understand that all of us have those as individuals. When you're leading a group, how might those impact those that you're working with? So first looking inward, then we thought about the outward part. When you are a leader and you're doing the actual work of leadership that people actually see, what are some skills that you might develop, some conversations we can have to better understand what that will look like when you take that next step? So it was sort of like the inward first, and then looking outward, the traditional leadership part of things.
That's great. I just finished reading Brene Brown's Dare to Lead, and her focus on values and taking that inward, scan and leading from those values is so critical. And so that's great to hear. That was such an important focus, as well as the practical skills, which we're always needing.
Well, and I would just add that I think sometimes people misunderstand sort of what the actual skills are and the habits of mind in leadership, and how, and don't recognize how important that sort of interpersonal skills piece is, and how we relate with ourselves and how we interact with other humans is such a critical piece that I think sometimes gets overlooked in studies about leadership or in people thinking about what it really takes to be a leader.
And how about the individuals who were part of your cohort this year? How did you see them grow, or what did you see were the most valuable takeaways for them?
We were both really nervous, obviously, about doing this on Zoom in a program that had been designed to be in person, and worried about whether would they connect with each other, with us. And it was striking, I think, from the beginning to the end, how much growth we saw, especially in their comfort with being vulnerable with each other, with talking. We tried to create lots of opportunities for large group discussions and small groups and partners, but I think their ability to feel like it felt, one of our participants had a baby and we all were, so excited, just things like that, we sort of grew as a group, I think, as people who could support each other.
Yeah, and I would just add that it was nice to see also taking part in that leadership, that they, as the course went on, were able to step into a little bit more and not be as hesitant to ask the harder questions, challenge each other. So it was nice to see the progress over the sessions.
Yeah, and it's great for me to hear that you were able to do that in the online environment, because I've taken part in so many CATDC groups in person and online, and that kind of community and ability to be vulnerable and step in and step up is so critical to growth and to what we're trying to create. So given the level of responsibility you both have at your schools, why did you decide to take on, especially in this pandemic year, this extra commitment?
Yes, starting a school year in a pandemic on Zoom is enough. But this course, I actually think that experience and talking with Laura as we were preparing for it was one of the reasons why we really were excited about it. When we talked before about emotional challenges and how you're managing a lot as a leader. And this pandemic focus almost brought extra focus on that. It brought everything to the surface. And it just gives you an opportunity to really think in how can you manage very difficult, discussions? How can we add these topics into our sessions so that it amplifies a little bit what it means to be a leader, but it was lots of practical conversations around what it means to be a true leader in a normal time, but then how do you do that when things change? This is a true emergency for schools, but emergencies come up all the time. And so it was just a nice segue to some of the topics we had planned.
I feel like as a woman leader, especially this responsibility to, I think, demystify what it means to be in leadership and to help make people recognize that we all have these opportunities and strengths within us to be a leader. And so I know that's not just a thing, for women or people identify as women, but it's just, I just feel that personal responsibility that I want people to recognize that that leadership is accessible and, an extraordinary, rewarding thing to do.
Mm-hmm. What about for the two of you as leaders leading this program? What were some of your most important growth moments or takeaways?
I think, for me, really, it really deepened my friendship and partnership with Carla, which was was a real joy. And I think for me also as a middle and high school educator, learning about elementary school was really I learned a lot about kind of the different things that teachers are dealing with and the different ways that educators are at different levels. That was huge for me. And I think a part of why I took this on was sort of trying to think, again, in a crisis moment, where could I give back? And I feel like I learned what I could handle. Every crisis helps you think about what you can handle. So, even though Carla and I would laugh that when we would try to find our time to plan, it was often I've got 20 minutes between this thing and this, and we'll have to schedule 3 sequential meetings. But I don't know, every time we pulled it off, I think we felt proud and oh, wow, we did that.
Yes. And, with every session, we get feedback and reflection. I think Laura, I don't want to speak for you, Laura, but for me, it was after every session, it just really had me pause and reflect, even refine what I think about myself as a leader, and try and how might I share that differently next time. So I think that reflective process is what leaders do all the time. And having a class like this, you have, as teachers do, lesson plans. And then after you do the lesson, you start to think about, well, what would I do that differently? And how might I say it a little bit better next time? So the reflection piece was what I appreciated the most.
That's great. Well, along those lines, we're so happy that you're coming back next year to lead the program again for us. So you have that chance to bring your learning into 21, 22, the cohort for that year. And who would you say this program is built for? Who would you like to bring in? Who should join?
I think I hope it's anyone who's just thought, what is it like to be in that seat? What is it like to be a leader, to be a team leader, a department chair, a division head, a school head, just has wondered and thought, is that something I have in me? Is that something I would enjoy? Because I think especially for a lot of teachers who love teaching, there's that question where you think, gosh, do I really want to give this up to take on this other role? Because what does that actually mean? Your day is like, where do the joys come from? So I would think anyone who's ever sat by themselves and thought that question, this would be a great class for.
Yes. And even if your ultimate goal is not to leave the classroom, I think it gives you a lot of insight on what it means to lead in different ways. We have teacher leaders in many different capacities across campuses. And so there's something definitely to learn, no matter what your future plans are. And I will say that I had no plans on being a school administrator. None at all. And people, I will never be. And then here I am. So once you start thinking about things, you never know what the future brings. So even if it's not your goal to be a school head, I think this is a great class.
That's great. Do you, given your experiences and what you've done with our cohort this year, do you have any advice for school leaders, teacher leaders, anyone in a school that might resonate with this at this particular point in time? Any words of wisdom or advice?
Wow. This has been a year, right? So I think always I want us to just pause and reflect what we said about the emotional part of it. And in a crisis situation that's been highlighted by this pandemic, just to take care of each other, take care of yourself and make sure that you're managing what you can and asking for help when you need to, but also understanding that we are humans, like Laura said, and if you're in that leadership position, how might you extend that grace to the people that you're leading? Because I think that's what matters. That's what matters most. That's where we start our class, because that's what really matters the most.
And I think, and just extending grace to ourselves, that I think a lot of us in education hold ourselves to these really high standards of sort of that I've got to get it exactly right because the responsibility we feel for our students and our colleagues. And I think just to forgive ourselves every night, right? That we are doing the best we can in a really uncertain situation. And I think the more that we can say to ourselves, I'm just going to get up and try my best tomorrow. I think, you know, and recognizing that we will all extend that grace to each other, but extending it to ourselves too is so critical, I think, to get through this last part of such a hard year.
Thank you both. Thanks again so much for taking the time with us today and for all that you're giving CATDC and also your schools. It's really we're so lucky to have you.
Well, we're lucky to have the CATDC here in California. I'll say that I think your programs are excellent, and all the ones that my teachers and staff members have done have all been really, really good. So thank you for all you bring to the independent school world.
I absolutely agree.
Well, thank you. And CATDC, we hope you'll keep a lookout for our list of ongoing groups for 21-22. We'll be releasing that soon. And before that time, take a look at our Summer Institute lineup. Those programs are going to fill fast. So if you're planning to come, sign up soon. Thank you again. Enjoy the weekend and best of luck with the week ahead.
Great. Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you, Lisa.